Back again, another episode of Wall Street Sports. Carson Fowler here. I hope everyone had a eventful and awesome July 4th weekend. Shout out beautiful Door County, Wisconsin. Love that place. Really fun show planned for today. We also have an awesome guest as well. And as always, we'll start with a Hall of Fame introduction. This person is extremely involved in student media at Syracuse, Citrus TV analyst, reporter, and host, former sports intern at WFMZ TV in Allentown, Pennsylvania, current digital video intern at Sportsnet New York, SNY, the TV home of the New York Mets. But most importantly, she was Grimace for a bit on SNY's Baseball Night in New York with Chelsea Gerard. Welcome, Chloe Smarz. How we doing?
Oh, Carson.
How was your July 4th?
July 4th was great. Took a trip down Jersey Shore, spent some time with my friends and family. Couldn't complain. The weather was great. Summer's been good. How's your summer been in good old Syracuse?
Good old Syracuse. It's summer in Syracuse as good as it can be. Where were you on the shore?
I went to LBI with my friends on like the Friday, and then I went down to Wildwood, Cape May with the fam. Good time.
Money. How's SNY treating you so far?
SNY is a blast. I know you spent time there, so we talked about it a lot, but great place, great people. I'm actually going to be really, really sad when internship ends, which I feel like is my sign that I thoroughly enjoyed it. But we're getting up and getting ready for Jets coming up in like 2 weeks. So we'll shift from
There we go. Well, I'm sure people have seen the graphics. Not necessarily news, but definitely something worth talking about. Caitlin Clark, as of right now, will not go to Paris with Team USA women's basketball for the Olympics. Now, I understand the people on these selection committees are not focused on creating, they want the best team, maybe not the team with the most TV ratings. But that being said, this still seems like a missed layup, for a lack of better words. I want to get your first thoughts.
Yeah, I guess I had a very mixed opinion when I first heard about it. I get the whole angle of you want her there for marketing, you want her there for all this stuff. But I think if you ask Caitlin Clark herself, she would tell you that she deserves to be on that team, but she also doesn't want it to be handed to her. And I looked at the roster and I looked at someone like Kelsey Plum, who has been in the WNBA since 2017, has won back-to-back titles, MVPs, All-Star. This is her first year with the team. She was in 2020 on the 3-on-3 team, but this is her first year truly on the roster. And what does that tell you? Basically tells you that in this Olympic cycle, there are such good talent coming from the women's side and Team USA.
Right.
And where they're loaded at is at the guard position. And I mean, in my opinion, did the committee do the right thing? I think yes. You want to take players like Sabrina Ionescu and Diana Taurasi, who have been there before. And Caitlin Clark, if we're being honest, hasn't had the greatest start to her WNBA career, especially at the time where she wasn't around Team USA. Now, I don't know necessarily, I'm not knowledgeable on that, on how USA basketball takes that compared to, like, say, Team USA gymnastics. But she wasn't around the team until this past April. She was focused on Iowa and all that stuff, which is fine. But I just think that she was so focused in that sense. She had a tough start at the WNBA. And if you're bringing her in just for marketing reasons, that's a whole bigger conversation that we can get into about how it just diminishes the true value of what sports are. And the whole TV rights deal, I think, in my opinion, is getting way too overdone and out of place. And the similar analogy, I guess, I can bring to Caitlin Clark is almost like, now this could be a stretch, it's almost like Livy Dunn, right? If you want to put her on Team USA gymnastics, she's obviously the biggest name under Simone Biles, but is she qualified to be on the team? No. And I think that's just what it comes down to, is that Caitlin Clark, yes, talented, she will be on this roster one day, but is today her time? I don't think so. And I think that's perfectly fine, in my opinion. I'd love to know what you think, though.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. I think women's basketball is in a great place. Is it maybe some due in part to Caitlin Clark? Absolutely. But are there other players that are also contributing to that conversation? Yes. I got a stat here. 7.8 million people in the U.S. watched the women's basketball Olympic gold medal game in 21, and that was during COVID. So, yeah. I mean, for me, I still think people are going to watch women's basketball, whether Caitlin Clark is playing, which she being there would have helped. Totally. But there's also 15, 16, 17, however number of more sports in the Olympics. and people are still going to tune in. I agree with you. I think this conversation is so blown out of proportion. Not to mention, NBC, if we're really getting into the thick of it, has the Olympics till 2032. So
Yeah.
they're going to get their chance to have Caitlin Clark, have the other players on their roster going forward and capitalize off that sort of marketing. I think there's a lot of time for this to roll out.
I also think, regardless of what the decision was going to be, right? You put her on the roster, and now you get the whole thing of does she deserve to be on the roster? You take her off the roster, like we saw, and now it's a whole big thing of, oh, they screwed up, blah, 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 blah. But the committee selection chair said that she just didn't check every single box that they needed. That's fine. And I think that just needs to be the conversation is okay, great. Now Caitlin Clark can go focus on WNBA, focus on her rookie season. Team USA is still projected to win the gold. Like that, it's taking away from just the integrity of basketball, playing the game, and that's it. That's just my opinion on it all, though.
I want to get your thoughts on this. I believe that TV in general, sports television and commentary and that sort of thing, wanted Caitlin Clark there so they'd have more to talk about in terms of these games because let's be honest, she is the most popular player in women's basketball on the planet.
Yeah.
And they're thinking about their future. So that, to me, that's what was really driving this conversation. They just wanted her there just so they could keep filling their programming with women's basketball and having Caitlin Clark be that face. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're from an NBC perspective, absolutely. What like you don't. I was. We were talking about the whole Olympic thing, and in my personal opinion, the Olympics have died down in terms of hype of what they used to be. I think back to like 2012, and like those were the greatest Olympic games I think in our time alive. And I was thinking about why that was. And I think it just comes down to the fact that at that time, there was no social media. Or if there was, we had Instagram, but you're posting selfies like where you're going at.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't like you weren't going there for news. So then you get to 2016 Rio Games, which did a little worse than the 2012 games. I don't scratch the 2021 or 2020 Olympics with in Tokyo because of the pandemic, but it is so hard to market the Olympics because you don't follow these athletes throughout their whole career. They're just coming up on the scene. You go on Sports Center right now, you're seeing MLB All-Star, MLB trade deadline, NFL training camp, NBA offseason, right? That's what's being talked about. So I think if you go and ask someone on the street and you say, hey, you watching the Olympics, they're going to tell you, I don't know where it starts or when it starts, where it's at. It's just not the conversation anymore. And it's very hard for NBC, I believe, to market that because you have great that Simone Biles is back, great that you have Katie Ledecky and Caleb Dressel for swimming. But besides that, you don't really have such big names. So sure, would Caitlin Clark have helped 100%? But I think it's a bigger conversation of what's going on with the Olympics. Why is no one tuning in? Why is it so hard to get people to tune in? And if maybe bringing the Olympics to LA in 2028, it's a further conversation. Will that help? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a lot of great points. I guess so. The next thing I want to ask you is so they paid $7.7 billion with a B to have the Olympics. And you've already alluded to the fact that they need to make some changes if they want to capitalize on these games. So, what do you think some of those changes are to keep the conversation going between the years, one where there's not an Olympics, because I mean, you have winter and spring, but then in those years where you're not having any games at all?
I think it's very hard. And I don't know the exact answer. The only thing I could possibly say is you make a partnership, especially, I mean, if you're trying to mainly get US audience, I'm guessing if you're NBC. So the only thing I can think of is you have to collaborate with Team USA. You have to start producing mini docu-series. You have to give a ton of coverage to any visa championships, any of those small little benchmarks that get a player to the Olympics. They broadcasted the Olympic trials. I don't know the numbers of how many views that brought in, but it just gets so complicated, I think, especially when this is also a big topic in the NFL where you have so many different platforms to tune into a game. I literally saw a thing on Instagram yesterday. It's going to cost an average NFL fan 700 or close to $700 just to watch NFL football because you're paying for now it's on Netflix for Christmas. You have Amazon Prime, you have YouTube TV, you have your cable service because it blacks out channels that are in your region. You got to get away from that. You have to get one centralized way to consume the media. And I don't know how you do that besides pouring a lot more money into the social media aspect, mini dot like the YouTube parts of it. That's the only way I see it changing. Or I'm hoping now you can correct me if I'm wrong, but 2020, I know they're bringing in softball. Or are they bringing in baseball? Do we know the? I forget if that was confirmed or not.
I'm not 100% sure.
Like, if you, I mean, bringing in baseball to the Olympics would only do such great things. So you just got to kind of hope that you can find these little like storylines. The hard part about the Olympics is you don't know the storylines. You don't know who's going to turn good until after the Olympics are over. That's where I think NBC needs to capitalize, is almost after the games are done. Follow the players that you think are going to make it to 2028 and build that audience, because once you can connect with an athlete that way, I think then you get people tuning in. But it's very, I think, very, very difficult.
So I want to go back to your point about, marketing and advertising the like Visa Championship, the FIBA championships, things that go on in between. So I got a thing right here. The track and field Olympic trials in the United States averaged 4.5 million viewers across NBC and Peacock over the 8 nights of competition. And that was a 40% increase from the 21 trials. Granted, again, that was during a COVID year, but I think you're absolutely right. And they need to continue the conversation around these games. So then when it comes around, you're going to capitalize that perfect moment and get the most amount of people watching. Because let's be real, $7.7 billion, a lot of money. And I think I mean, generating $8 billion, because I think there's definitely some costs without just that deal alone. Paying your announcers, paying your producers, paying the travel, all that. So you're going to need to make at least $8 billion to break even on this, and it's such a short period of time that the buildup needs to be stronger. And that right there is proof that if you can invest in what's going on previous, you're going to get better outcomes and better better production from the actual Olympics. I love that you brought up the 2012 games, because really I think that's the one that sticks out and is most memorable to me. But for the life of me, I think maybe I was just too young, but I can't really remember why. I think it might have just been the storylines with like Gabby Douglas, but
Yeah. And when I interviewed Bob Costas back in end of September, I talked to him about it, because that was honestly how I connected to him, was because of the 2012 games. And I was like, I always asked him, like, why was that Olympic Games so much more special? And I think it kind of goes back to social media thing, but I think, I mean, you had Michael Phelps, that obviously will help. I think Gabby Douglas being like the first African American female USA gymnastics athlete to win gold is another big storyline. I think he just had a lot of record breaking stats that year too. But I also think it was just everyone was eager, even in 2008. I know we were very young, but that Olympic Games, I think, to our parents was a very big year. But like you were saying before, I think just you look at like women's basketball, to bring it back to that, the game blew up because people started talking about it. That's just this. You need the businesses to bring sponsorships. You need other athletes to talk about it. That's honestly how this all will start to progress in a positive note for NBC. But I don't know the true answer to it. And I know probably people at NBC are trying to figure that out. But I've seen very little promotion for the Olympics this year. I've seen some stuff on NBC for like Peacock commercials, like tune in, blah, blah, blah. But I've seen nothing, and I've seen no one talk about it. And I don't know if that's me not being on top of things or not, but I don't know about you. What have you seen about it?
yeah, so I really not much. I mean, really the thing that kind of sticks out to me is I know like at least the last year, maybe more, the NBC logo on their lower thirds on pretty much all of their programming has had the Olympic ranks. And like that's a big thing. But I think they really got to start promoting some of these things leading up to it, like we talked about earlier, just because it doesn't do it for me when we're so close. I mean, that's why like the only reason that regional sports networks like work right now is because sports are always happening. There's live programming is huge, and it works because so many people want to get that content, but not everyone wants to get the Olympics. Like the people that want to tune in are the people that are like diehard Team USA. And I think, I hate to say it, but I think in an era where maybe like nationalism and patriotism for our country is kind of in a bad place, it's not a great year to also have the Olympics, because I for some maybe this is my opinion. I love your thoughts on it. I feel like there's a connection between those two. People aren't going to want to do that, draw into this just because maybe they're not seeing the United States in the best light right now.
I completely agree with you. I think that because normally you go to the Olympics to gain national pride. I
Right.
think people are so checked out. Politics, whoever's in, like I know I am. I've never been like the biggest political person, but even after all of this, you just don't care, which is sad, which is really sad. And I think covering, I think what it comes again, it all comes back to just the increase of social media. If I'm an everyday person at work, I'm not going to put the Olympics on, have to watch it for hours. I'm going to go on TikTok after it's over and see the highlights. Okay, who won? Okay, that's how where we're at in the medal count.
Right.
That you don't need to watch it anymore. And it's different from when you look at like the NFL or the NBA, it's constantly being covered. There's always a new storyline. What is your storyline for the Olympics this year? I don't know. And that's bad that we don't know. So I don't know if that's maybe once a week NBC puts Olympic things you should know show. I don't know, interviews play, especially after the trials are done and you have your set teams and you have your set athletes. They should be a segment every single day on the Today Show, any nightly show, just getting them in your face so that you're like, oh, all right, maybe I like this person. Also, by the way, side note, I need to add this: the state with the highest amount of athletes at the Olympic trials was New Jersey. You just have to add that in. Saw that stat and I was very proud.
There you go. There
But
you go.
that's just, yeah, I just think you just got to throw more content in people's faces and hope that that helps.
I also want to add one thing before we probably close this up. I think at least at the local level, also like I think this is kind of where you break the media clutter. So at least I know at my station that I'm working at right now, any single person that is like Rochester, Syracuse, or like Rome, New
Yeah.
York, Camillus, like whatever, is a native of our like DMA. We're running
Mhm.
that story no matter what. Granted, we're an NBC station, but I think also like localizing some of these people and their stories and like really connecting through like interviews and packages and like really good journalism is how we're gonna like that's how the Olympics is gonna do well.
Yeah.
Because like exactly what you just said, most people that are in the Olympics are from the state of New Jersey. You have some pride in like your state and where you're from, and I think it's gonna be a huge thing this year, especially. And I think it's probably because I think everyone likes to say like my neighbor or my cousin or
Yeah.
whoever is in the Olympics. Like it's just kind of like a way to like connect yourself to the what's going on. So
Yeah, I'm curious to see, first off, one, how this opening ceremony goes, being that they're all on the floats in the river. That's I'm curious about. Two, I'm curious just to see how it does. I'm going to be honest, like the numbers wise, because in a class I actually took when I was studying abroad in Florence, we learned about like literally the numbers of the Olympics. And ever since 2012, it's just gone downhill. Then you start to wonder, okay, so what's the outlook in 2028? I do think that will be a big year in terms of views from US and Canada, but who knows? I don't have an answer and it's very tough, very tough.
I also wonder if any like geopolitical reasons, like kind of
Yeah.
like at the the Russian Olympics. Like I know that was kind of this.
Mhm.
That's always kind of a storyline, though. I think like the news loves that because it's like, oh, this is like our kind of like cross section with sports. Like we could, anyways. But hey, I think that'll probably wrap up shop on this. This is a great episode. I loved, going from Caitlin Clark to like the Olympics and its, grand scheme of things. But glad to have you on. Glad you're doing well, SNY, and good to see your face.
Of course. Good to see you, friend.
Right. Well, I think that'll about do it for this episode of Wall Street Sports. Again, Wall Street Sports on YouTube, and then we got a new Twitter name, so it's Wall Street Sports Pod. Like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.